Every single day, millions of people hand these things back and forth without thinking twice. They stuff them in wallets, lose them in coat pockets, fold them into birthday cards. The euro is so ordinary, so constant, so completely taken for granted that almost nobody stops to ask the obvious question: where does it actually come from? Not in the abstract monetary policy sense, physically. The paper, the ink, the holograms, the tiny details most people have never noticed despite handling these things thousands of times. The process of turning raw materials into something a continent of 350 million people trust enough to exchange for real goods and services is one of the most secretive, technically demanding manufacturing operations on Earth. And almost nobody has seen inside it. This is how a euro gets made. The Österreichische Banknoten- und Sicherheitsdruck, or OEBS, sits in Vienna, Austria. It's one of the primary manufacturers of euro banknotes for the European Central Bank and produces notes for over 60 countries worldwide. From the outside, it looks like an unremarkable industrial facility. That is entirely intentional. There are no signs pointing to it, no public tours. Security at the perimeter is significant, layered, and discreet in the way that serious security tends to be. The people who work inside sign agreements that cover what they can and cannot say. The specific details of the production process, the exact quantities printed on any given day, the technical specifications of the security features, classified. Not government classified, something quieter than that. Industrial classified, which in some ways is harder to penetrate. What we do know comes from a combination of official disclosures, technical documentation released by the European Central Bank, and the small amount of footage that has ever been permitted inside facilities like this. It is enough to understand what's actually happening in there, and it is considerably more interesting than you would expect. Here's the first thing that surprises most people. Euro banknotes are not printed on paper. Not paper in the way you're thinking. The material used is a cotton and linen fiber blend with no wood pulp involved at all. Wood pulp paper tears, absorbs moisture badly, and degrades quickly under the kind of daily handling a banknote receives. Cotton fiber is more durable, holds ink differently, and crucially, feels distinct. That specific texture you notice when you rub a note between your fingers is not an accident. It's a security feature. A good counterfeit might look right, making it feel right is significantly harder. The paper that arrives at the facility is already embedded with security threads, which are thin metallic or polymer strips woven directly into the material during its manufacture at specialist mills. On a 20 euro note, that thread is visible as a dark stripe when held up normally, and shifts to show the denomination and the word euro when held to the light. Putting it there after the fact is essentially impossible. It has to go in during the paper making process itself, which means counterfeiting a euro starts failing before a single drop of ink has been applied. The paper is also treated with a chemical that causes it to glow under ultraviolet light in specific patterns. Cashiers in every shop in Europe have a UV lamp under the counter for exactly this reason. Banknote ink is its own category of industrial technology. The ECB works with specialist ink manufacturers who supply formulations that are, to varying degrees, proprietary. The visible colors you see on a note are only part of the picture. Embedded throughout the printing are inks that are invisible to the naked eye. They're reactive to ultraviolet and infrared light, detectable by the machines in ATMs and cash counters that verify notes millions of times a day across the continent. The most visually striking application is the color-shifting ink on higher denomination notes. Hold a 50 euro note at an angle and the number at the bottom right shifts from emerald green to deep blue. That effect comes from ink containing microscopic metallic flakes engineered to reflect different wavelengths of light depending on the viewing angle. The technology to produce it exists in very few places on Earth. Getting a hold of it outside official channels is not a matter of money. It's simply not available. One of the most important printing techniques used is called intaglio. It's a process dating back centuries. Originally used for fine art printing, adapted for security documents because of one property nothing else replicates, intaglio forces ink into the surface of the paper under enormous pressure, leaving the printed areas raised and tactile. Run your thumb across the Europa text on any note, and you can feel it. That slight ridge is intaglio. It cannot be reproduced with a standard printer, a photocopier, or anything a person could reasonably access. The machines that do it are the size of a room, cost millions, and are among the most controlled pieces of industrial equipment in existence. The hologram on a euro is not stuck on like a sticker. It is a hot stamped foil applied under heat and pressure so that it bonds directly with the surface of the note. Attempting to remove it damages the note visibly and irreparably. The hologram itself contains multiple overlapping images that change depending on the angle of light, including the denomination, the euro symbol, and a portrait window on newer Europa series notes that shows a watermark portrait visible from both sides. Designing a hologram at this level of complexity requires the kind of optical engineering that sits at the intersection of physics and industrial manufacturing. The ECB works with a small number of specialist firms across Europe who produce these foils. The specifications are never published. The tooling required to replicate them does not exist outside the official supply chain. Every single one of these features, the paper, the ink, the thread, the hologram, the ultraviolet layers, are designed with one principle in mind. A counterfeiter would need to defeat all of them simultaneously to produce a convincing fake. Defeating one or two is extraordinarily difficult. Defeating all of them at once, at the scale required to make counterfeiting economically worthwhile, has never been successfully achieved on euro banknotes. The ECB and its network of national printing works produce approximately 5 to 7 billion banknotes per year across the Eurozone. The 50 euro note is by far the most printed denomination, accounting for roughly 45% of all notes in circulation. The 20 euro note comes second. Together they represent the practical daily currency of an entire continent. Each note has a lifespan before it's withdrawn from circulation and destroyed. A 50 euro note lasts approximately 4 years under normal handling. Lower denominations change hands more frequently and wear out faster, sometimes in under 2 years. When notes are withdrawn, they are shredded at secure facilities, and the material processed under strict protocols to ensure nothing recoverable enters the waste stream. The entire cycle, printing, circulation, wear, withdrawal, destruction, replacement, runs continuously, invisibly, under the surface of daily economic life across 20 countries. The ECB publishes annual counterfeiting statistics. In a recent year, approximately 376,000 counterfeit euro banknotes were removed from circulation across the Eurozone. That sounds like a lot until you consider that there are roughly 30 billion genuine notes in circulation at any given time. The counterfeit rate is so low, it is statistically negligible. The security architecture works. Most counterfeits that do circulate are low quality, caught quickly by basic UV checks or machine readers, and they tend to cluster around the 20 to 50 euro denominations precisely because they circulate the most and get checked the least carefully in busy retail environments. High quality counterfeiting at scale, the kind that could actually represent a threat to monetary confidence, essentially does not exist for the euro. The cost and technical barrier to producing convincing fakes is higher than the potential return, which is exactly what the people who designed these notes intended. Tilt it, watch the number shift color, feel the ridge of ink under your thumb. Everything you are holding is the result of decades of material science, optical engineering, and industrial security work, compressed into something that weighs less than a gram. Most people handle these things thousands of times and never once wonder where they came from. The whole operation runs quietly, invisibly, underneath daily life across 20 countries and 350 million people. Now you know. Subscribe if you want to keep knowing things most people never think to ask about. We'll see you next time.